You can learn how to do virtually anything. I promise that.
There's certain times where you see a natural gift that somebody does have.
And the one guy behind the curtain calling everything. Like if we were directing a movie, that's Monico.
I've changed a lot of my habits as far as eating, as far as, health and everything. When we first met, I was a lot heavier.
It's so gratifying when someone goes, well, I know I came to a business seminar, but it helped me be a better dad, or it helped me be a better mom, or it helped me be a better whatever. He was about to bite into a big burger with a bunch of friends, right? A lot of people get into a hopeless mindset.
Each person has their strengths,
but they work so hard. 10 to 15 hours, make $75 to $150. It was the most sketchy thing on earth.
I think your natural part is the storytelling.
I was a lion looking in the mirror, seeing back the reflection of a kitten.
Hey, welcome everyone to another podcast here with Life Mastery Trainings. My name is Monico Perez, and I'm joined with one of my other co-founders, Mr. Marc Accetta, and we're definitely missing our other two founders, Stavros and George. But question I wanted to ask you.
Well, wait a minute. If you're opening the show, shouldn't I ask you the questions?
I guess. Well, yeah, unless you're like a guest. And I want to pick your brain a little bit.
All right. You can ask the question.
That's easier. That's easier. You don't want to get into this brain.
Monico's been behind the camera for so long. I just get the biggest kick out of the fact that you're now right out here with me.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, right on the front line.
I know. I'm taking the bullets.
Yeah. Hey, better you than me. So what was your question?
So question I wanted to ask, multiple different reasons, is what do you believe in, nature or nurture, as far as whether it's business, whether it's kids? I'm raising my kids, so I kind of, I'm going to be asking the questions just to kind of obviously pick your brain a little bit more on that, because I'm seeing you raise your daughters and stuff, and it's just been awesome to have you in that role. But now I want to obviously learn some of this stuff as well.
Yeah. So again, this is what I love about personal development. A lot of what we teach at our events is it's applicable to everything. Mm-hmm. So while a lot of people come to a seminar to learn how to make money, I mean, I'm not kidding myself. If I had not made a lot of money, no one would ever want to come see what I have to say. Yeah. It's like, so people come in through that door, but then it's so gratifying when someone goes, well, I know I came to a business seminar, but it helped me be a better dad, or it helped me be a better mom, or it helped me be a better whatever. It helped me at my regular job where, I'm not necessarily getting rich, but I just want to be great. Yeah. So, nurture or nature is a big thing. So there's so many different ways of going this. So for example, I think the best way I could say is, my mom and dad both had high blood pressure. So I'm predisposed. My genes are those that would probably expose me to having high blood pressure. So that's nature, if you've never heard this before. But, the lifestyle I've chosen to live, partially because I know they had health issues, but secondly, just I've been on a mission to be healthy. I mean, I was fortunate that the business I was in, we're always selling healthy, environmentally friendly, natural things. So it just became a way of life. I know we both kind of went down that path. So the nurture part of it is I ended up hiring a concierge doctor that I go to every month, not when I'm sick. That's when most people go to a doctor, when they're sick. But I go to Dr. Robert Brown every month, kind of like just to make sure I'm staying in the best possible peak health. Right. So it's about diet. It's about exercise. It's about sleep. It's about water intake. It's about, all these different factors. So the nature of it is one thing, but the nurturing and getting, in other words, it's not a death sentence, literally, if you're like your family had it. You said, I think you said.
With sugar and diabetes and stuff. So obviously it's like you said, you don't nurture that. You kind of want to go opposite. And just because that that's something that you're, susceptible to, you just don't want to, kind of dive into it. So I've changed a lot of my habits as far as eating, as far as, health and everything. When we first met, I was a lot heavier, than I am now. And I, just to jump back, the first interaction we had, it was definitely about money. So it's not like I came in here.
Yeah.
It definitely not like we started and it was like, hey, I want to be an awesome dad, or hey, I want to be, 20 pounds light or anything. It was like, hey, what's the most expensive, if you remember that conversation, what's the most expensive, crazy thing you've seen, bought or, so the money.
We should do a whole podcast on that car ride sometime. My car broke down in Austin, Texas. He was living in Austin. I live in Dallas. If you don't know, it's about a 3.5 hour ride. And I needed someone to give me a ride back. My car was undrivable. So I called him up, and at the time I didn't realize he wasn't that excited he was about to bite into a big burger with a bunch of friends, right? I guess I'm going to tell the story. Yeah. And I convinced them to come up with me, and I would buy him dinner on the way home. There was a Saltgrass Steakhouse, I think. Yeah. But it was funny. Like, at the time he was on my sales team, and whenever people are on my sales team, they're like, tell me about they always want to know how to make money. He didn't ask me one question about how to make money. Yeah. He was just excited about who I've hung out with, where I've partied, what cities I've been to.
At the time, The Sopranos was big. So I was, of course, like a big Sopranos fan. So I was like, hey, you're from the East Coast. So do you have any mob stories? Do you have any of that stuff?
All right, let's get back on track, because we could go down.
So obviously there's certain, the other thing that kind of popped in my head that I was asking as far as with nature or nurture is there's certain times where you see a natural gift that somebody does have, whether it's a child or somebody on a sales team or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, we could talk about it in 100 different ways. So nature, go to your point. Like, let's think about an athlete. That's pretty obvious.
I was going to say, I was thinking of your boy Tua, that he's
Tua. I love, for all of you who don't, Tua, everyone's been hating on this kid from the minute he walked onto the campus at Alabama. The media just hates him. Put up some of the best stats in history of college football. Didn't win the Heisman. Goes to the pros. He had a really good season last year before he got hurt. He's having a great MVP season, and people still can't be it's only because he has great players around him. It's like, I don't know about Tua. I'm just saying I got an opportunity to sit next to a future Hall of Famer named Larry Fitzgerald. He's very popular. He does that podcast with Tom Brady right now. Let's go. And Larry's such a nice guy, such a humble guy. And I was at a dinner, my friend Nancy Lieberman, first woman ever in the Basketball Hall of Fame. She's good friends with Larry. And I just ended up sitting next to him at the gala dinner. And, we got into it. He was so cool. He's like, what do you do for a living? And I said, I kind of teach personal development. He's like, dude, I love that. And we started chatting. And what he was saying is, look, there's a lot of guys who are great physical athletes. They just have amazing physical ability. So that's the nature part of it. They just naturally have great eye-hand coordination. Right. They have great strength. They have great speed, whatever the case might be. But the nurture part is there's a lot of athletes, and this is him talking, who are, great players in the NFL where he plays, who don't have the greatest physical skills, but they work so hard and they get the best trainers and they take the best care of their body and they study the plays more. So the good news is, if you have not got freakish physical ability, you can still be a great professional athlete. The great news is, if you are not a natural born salesperson, you can still become a great salesperson. The good news is, if you have, like for me, I've got naturally high cholesterol, one type of cholesterol, LP(a), for those of you that are health people. And it's just there. Like, there's nothing I did to create it. It's just part of the things I inherited from one of my parents. So the good news is, I can still be really healthy, even though I'm disposed to that. Right. So there is nature, though, and it's real. You can't discount it. It's there. So there's the people who have, let's say people have no cholesterol. Let's say, you can't have no cholesterol, but they have, let's say nature is, you're incredibly physically healthy. Maybe your parents lived to 100 years old, both of them. And maybe you've just got virtually no history of disease in your family. But if you eat horribly and you abuse your body, so you follow what I'm saying? It can go both ways. Right. And I think a lot of people get into a kind of a victim mindset, or a hopeless mindset would be a better way of saying it. It's like, well, I'm going to be unhealthy because both my parents had this problem.
Yeah.
Or, I'm never going to be really successful because I come from a family of, generations of people who weren't successful.
Right.
So, it's a really interesting question.
Right. Well, kind of going back to what you were, earlier that you had brought up as far as, certain players on the team have different abilities, which is kind of cool because you introduced that to me, but in a different type of way with the personalities and colors. Like, you've got the red, blue, green, and yellow, and each person has their strengths. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like now, when I was a part of your sales team, I'm going back to that, is you would say, like, for me, for instance, naturally I'm a blue. So outgoing, love to talk to people, meet new people, everything.
Well, let's pause. Keep your exact thought. Right. So you can go to marcacetta.com. We'll put
we'll put it in the bottom.
And take the test. We've had a couple million people take the test. The cool thing is we're not trying to sell anything. You know what I mean? All we're doing is giving you a great personality test. And you find out what you are. And we use colors because without getting to we should do a whole show on this. Yeah. But most personality tests, Myers-Briggs or DISC or whatever you might have been exposed to in the workplace, all about discovering really who you are, which is great. Self-discovery is great. What I figured out, or, I'm not the only one who figured it out, but the idea is what's more important is how, if I'm a natural red, you're a blue, I'm a red.
Right.
So we actually like and dislike things differently. You know what I mean? It's our, and again, for those people who, I love when people go, can you teach me how to be a blue? It's like, look, this really comes from Hippocrates, the ancient physician. Yeah. And he talked about the amount of yellow bile in your brain compared to the amount of black bile in your brain. I started reading that book and it was too much for me, so, but in other words, what am I going to do? Change the amount of black bile I've got in my brain? So you can't really change. We just are the way we are in that regard. So what we teach is, like, if I'm naturally red and you're naturally a blue, then I'm going to become blue. I'm going to be a chameleon. That's why we use colors, because people are more comfortable when you communicate with them in their natural communication style, and you eliminate the things that naturally annoy them. So anyway, I just want to go. So you're a blue.
Yeah. So when we were, obviously I was part of your downline, but you would then see that, kind of like that natural ability that I would have of connecting with people or going out front. And you'd be like, hey, he's great at that. So let me now nurture that natural part of him. Yeah. And, I could still be part of the team. So I still felt like, okay, cool. I may not be awesome in front of the, in front of the crowd. I may not be great at all the details of presentations, but I could bring people to the room. I could, different things like that, which is kind of what you were saying with the, the coach and being able to see the, the different players and their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, you're actually, it's funny because you are nature and nurture, because your natural abilities are truly behind the camera. Like if you don't know this, some of you guys have been to events that I've done over the years with, 10, 15, 20, 30, 25, 30,000 people in a room. And, there's a crew of dozens of people. I mean, we have big 18-wheeler trucks unloading everything. And the one guy behind the curtain calling everything. Like if we're directing a movie, that's Monico. So he's usually you're behind it or you're in front of it. So your natural ability is behind, but now we're nurturing your ability to get in front of the camera. But no, to your point, you were naturally really good at connecting with people. And I naturally suck at that. I'm an introvert, you're an extrovert. So the thing though is you can learn how to do things. So for me, I was in college. I've told people this story. Listen, if you can ever get to the training we do called Speaking Mastery, do it. Don't want to toot my own horn, as they say, but I promise I had no real guidance on how to be a public speaker. Now, my mentor in my mind, was the best speaker I've ever seen in my life. So I got to go see him. I paid to go to seminars, and I saw him over and over and over again. So I got a living example to watch and match and model, but I was never given direction from him on how to be a speaker. I never had a book on how to be a speaker. So at Speaking Mastery, we take everything I've learned in 25, 30 years and teach people who want to be speakers. But the ironic thing I'm getting to, I'm in college, and I had to take a class to graduate, and it came down to a chemistry class or some kind of science class or a public speaking class, and I hate science, just not my gig. So I took the public speaking. It was, quote unquote, the lesser of the two evils. And I knew I'd be a little nervous, but I was also like, how hard can it be? Right. We got in a class of 15, I think 16 kids. And I had to give a 2-minute talk, a 5-minute talk, and the final was a 10-minute talk. And I was terrified. And my 10-minute final was about 3 minutes long because I got up in front of the room. Right. They tell you to tell a joke to win over the audience. I'm not going to tell you what the joke was right now, but I told the joke. Nobody laughed. And I lost every ounce of possible confidence I had. I raced through. It was an absolute train wreck. And the professor was kind enough to give me a C-. So naturally, I was scared to do public speaking, but as time went on, I got into a business where there had to be presentations. So I used to show I used to do a videotape. I'd walk and go, "Hi, watch this." And that's all I did. And finally, thank God, I had a manager who was like, "Hey, you can't do that. You got to do a live presentation." I'm like, "No, I don't." So he he said, "Do the first 15%, then we would cue the video up to a certain point." And I would somehow get through to that part, then put the video in, thank God, go back in my office and drink a beer. I was so stressed out and nervous, and then come back at the end. And slowly but surely, I could do the whole presentation. Then I did enough of it, and that was a room with like 12 chairs or something like that. As time went on, I just did it and did it and did it and did it and watched good speakers. So again, nature terrible. I was nurtured into being a good speaker, and I ended up getting really good at it. So
and I think
you can get really good at it.
I think your natural part is the storytelling, because like that's, again, when we first met, I mean, honestly, the 4 hours was me asking you, that way you'd keep on telling me stories, and that's where I was like, wow, this is so
it's true. But here's the thing, I didn't know that. That's why people need to come something like Speaking Mastery. So if I was always good at telling a joke. I know you're good at it too, right? So with telling a joke, you got to remember it, you got to tell it the right, or you have good timing, like any comedian will tell you, you got to have great timing. And I just was always interested in that, and I modeled people who were great at it. So and storytelling is the exact same thing. And now, like, everyone is selling a course on how to be a great storyteller and be a great speaker. I get it, it's true. But the point is, I didn't know that. If I'd have known that, then I'd have gone, oh shit, I can be a great public speaker. But I didn't know that. You know what I mean? So that was a natural ability. It was just, it was interesting. But I was also not going to be a salesman. Like back in college, we got to throw up a photo of me when I was back there. I had long hair, and I was a musician. The late Dan Fogelberg was my idol, so I tried to look like him. And I was like, money is evil. I'm not going to play the money game. And then I ended up in sales because I answered a blind ad in the paper, you know what I mean? And that's another hilarious story.
In the newspaper. Some people don't know that there used to be a newspaper. There's this thing you used to have in a newspaper, and I'll never forget. It said, work 10 to 15 hours, make $75 to $150. And it didn't say what it was at all. Oh my gosh. Again, we don't have time right now, but someday I'll tell the story of the office I went into. It was the most sketchy thing on earth. But anyway, and I met a charismatic guy who convinced me that I could make a fortune selling cookware, china, and crystal. Now, I was a college student, and you and I are both musicians, right? So I was in a band. If you ever seen the movie That Thing You Do, I mean, that was kind of what happened. We weren't that successful, but in college, we were playing 5 nights a week, and I had money rolling in. Like my mom and dad would give me $100 a semester for spending money, $100 for 90 days. And all of a sudden, we were making $100
$500 a gig.
Yeah.
So 500, 600 a week. Like I was rolling, man. I had money. That wasn't even a thing back then, but I had cash. And then all of a sudden our band just had an argument and it was over. And that was it. And I had no cash, and I had our senior formal coming up, and I had all the stuff I had to do with my girlfriend at the time. Yeah. So I needed money. So I took a job selling cookware, china and crystal door to door. And the thing about it was I learned how to sell. Right. I was terrible in the beginning. Oh my gosh, I was so terrible. But there was a training program, and it wasn't my natural instinct to do it, but they taught me. So nature, no. Nurture, yes. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of the main thing to get. Don't look at, if you've got the nature, if it's working in your favor, combine it, because that's really what Larry Fitzgerald told me that. Right. He was like, man, here's the ultimate thing. You got someone who's got the physical talent. So they got the nature part, but then they have the hunger and desire and the humility to be a student. Right. And then you put them together. Yeah. So if you've got nature and nurture, that's how you can be like Larry Fitzgerald. You can be in the Hall of Fame. Right. Or if you don't have the nature, you can do the nurture. So let's finish up real quick with kids. Like, you know, if a kid is not nurtured properly, as a parent, it's our job to raise our children properly. Yeah. So you don't want to let it just be, well, we'll just see how they grow up. You know what I mean? It's our job to nurture them. If I'm running a sales team, it's my job to nurture, to guide, to mold. Right. Some things with children, and when you're building a company, you've got to discipline people. Yeah. You need to reward them as well, but you need to discipline people. So that's a great subject. There's a lot more to it. But again, at one of our events, we're going to have to do this. I'm sure we'll do a Q&A section at some point. But
as far as that,
it just, I'm telling you, if you're sitting there, final thought, and you just know that you don't have Hollywood good looks, or you don't have any natural whatever ability, you can learn how to do virtually anything. I promise that. You know, I go back to one of my favorite things we talk about all the time at the events. It's that picture of the little kitten looking into a full-length mirror, and it sees back the reflection of a roaring lion, and that's so inspiring. Well, for me, I was a lion looking in the mirror, seeing back the reflection of a kitten. That's what I was. Yeah. Understand how powerful you really are, and understand if you're willing to put in the energy, if you're willing to pay the price, if you're willing to get nurtured by someone who can guide you in the right direction, then literally anything is possible. So that's all we have for right now, but we will see you again next week. Make sure you tune in.